Once again, lost deep within the twisting, labyrinthian halls of the Frost Hollow on a mission to find the forgotten and the uncatalogued, we are 665.66 UHMR Chemrat Radio. And how does our resident archaeosavant get me out of the Underhive and into this endless, icy darkness? He does that with the promise of all of the loot that I can cram into this grav skiff, of course. And you're helping too, right?
Yes.
You're carrying stuff as well? Okay, good.
Plus plasma. I let him play with unregulated plasma.
Can't lie, that is a really good sales point.
But I do make him document everything we loot, and he has to do little maps and take pictures, so, you know. I am an archaeologist.
He also makes me write down everything I shoot. He says it's science. He says if I write it down, it's science. Hoping to land my hands on a pair of those often whispered about and infamous power axes, I am your host, Goblin King. Joined today by the maestro of ancient knowledge, leading this unhinged expedition into the crusted layers of Arconia's history, the archaeo savant Chac.
Hey guys, we've got a trip for you today.
And with that, welcome to episode 116 of Under the Hive of Madness, Warhammer Origins, a complete timeline part 2. Now, if you guys remember, a handful of episodes ago, in fact, episode 99, Chac and I started on this path, and our goal was to essentially go through every game that Games Workshop had released on the Warhammer 40k side of the coin. We'll probably do the fantasy side at some point, but this is all focused on the Warhammer 40k side of the coin. And originally, we had been like, we're going to do it in 2 parts. As we've kind of peeled everything back and started to sort of discover where some of the lore clues come from and all of that, we've expanded a little bit. I think at this point, this is probably going to end up being a series in 3 parts.
Yeah.
And we will probably do the last part with Emmy and Drew in about 6 or 7 more episodes from now. We'll do another little chunk of Horus Heresy and then we'll come back. I feel like that feels right, Chac, because we got to get into some of the 6th, 7th, and 8th madness.
Yeah.
As its own thing.
It is. And then 8, 9, and 10 is its own thing too. It's really weird. But you can 8 and 9 can go together and you toss 10 in on that. So 10, it is different though. But I don't know if it's 10th edition has its own show. I don't know.
We'll see. Yeah, that's true. We'll see where we get to. In our first episode, though, we talked about everything from Warhammer 40,000 Rogue Trader up until the release of 3rd edition, getting into the weeds about the pre-Necromunda games of Laser Burn and Confrontation, and digging into the history of the game Epic. But that wasn't all that Games Workshop was up to, as Warhammer Fantasy was massive in the 1980s and 1990s. The Black Library was just starting to kick off and become a real publishing house, and GW wasn't exactly silent when it came to specialty board games either.
No.
Most notably, I would say the elephant in the room, the thing we haven't talked about yet, is Space Hulk. The first Space Hulk game came out in 1989, and I want to know if you had any experience with the first Space Hulk game and what that experience may have been.
I did. I owned the first Space Hulk, and I had trouble finding people to play it with me, but I did have it. This was sort of in my trying to find people to play 40K. I wasn't fully in the hobby right now with the actual, playing games, but I was still trying to find people. I had moved, just all that sort of stuff. But yeah, I had this Space Hulk. You had the little, you had the game board that was the hexagons, I believe.
Yeah, I think I think it's
squares. You can see it down
modular.
there. Yeah.
You can build them as a puzzle.
Yeah. And it was Terminators versus Tyranids.
Yep. Terminators versus Gene Stealers.
Yeah.
As we've discussed a couple of times, they weren't necessarily Tyranids.
Yeah, and I wish they'd stayed that way. I wish they'd been their own separate, faction, because I really don't think that Gene Stealers fit with Tyranids.
I do, and I wonder if that's we started playing around the same time. Because I started in 92. So you probably started playing a little bit before I did,
but not much.
but not much.
But I was older than you when I started playing, which might
That's
also
true.
make a difference.
That's true. Yeah, for whatever reason, I was much more accepting of Gene Stealers. Now your experience with the original Space Hulk was my experience with Hero Quest. Like it was
Yeah.
so hard to find people to play Hero Quest or Battle Masters, which is another early pre Games Workshop being called Games Workshop game. Now, I don't know if you remember this, but I swear there is a game by Games Workshop. It was a specialty board game called like Chainsaw Man or
That's an
Space.
anime.
No, but that's why I can't. That's why I feel like I can't find real information on it. Is because of the anime. But I swear there was a board game. You're not? It's not jogging any memories, and the only thing you
It's
can think of is
not.
the anime. Maybe it was like Space Chainsaw Man, or maybe it was like Space Warrior. It wasn't Space Crusader, which is another really early game. Did we talk about Space Crusade yet?
I don't think we did.
So Space Crusade was another early GW game, and again, kind of on the Space Hulk layer. But Space Crusade had Gene Stealers, and it had the Dwarf AI Men of Iron, the Chaos Men of
Right.
Iron, that ended up becoming the Necrons. So that's their legacy. I swear there was
I
something
just
called
found something on the fandom
Chainsaw.
wiki of all these weird. It's like, was that actually a G-Dub game? But then I recognize a whole bunch of them. You know, I got all the Hero Quest and all and Battle Masters, but you also have Trolls Pantry and Hungry Troll,
I found it. It's called Chainsaw Warrior.
Chainsaw Warrior.
I don't think. Yeah, it is. It's a solo play Games Workshop board
Wow.
game. Wow. I told you it was out there. I'm sorry. Okay, so you were saying you found this website and then I interrupted you
It's a
rudely.
fandom website, and they have all these Games Workshop games going back to these following games were published by Games Workshop, but not set in the Warhammer 40,000 or Warhammer Fantasy setting. So it goes back to 75 with they did some Dungeons and Dragons under license. We know
Yeah.
that Traveler. That was
Yep. They did a bunch
that
of
was back
Traveler
when
stuff.
Traveler was horrible. You'd like die rolling up your character.
Yep.
Apocalypse, Doctor Who, Valley of the Four Winds, Warlock, Quirks, Tower Blocks. Then you have RuneQuest, Star Trek. They licensed Star Trek.
It looks like Chainsaw Warrior was not a 40k game, but it was a Games Workshop game. And it looks, looking at the artwork, it looks very under
Yeah,
Hivey.
it does.
Maybe a potential precursor, but it was in 1987. So,
Or sort of like
um,
Judge Dreddy stuff.
yes, it looks like there's a chance. I believe it's Arbiter Ian who has like a full.
He
Yeah, it looks
might.
like there
That's
might
a
be
good
a
channel.
video. It looks like there might be a video on him actually playing the game. So maybe if you guys are interested, you could find some more information that way. But yeah, so I just knew it was in my head. So to get back to Space Hulk, the game focused on a two-player experience, and it pitted a squad of Space Marine Terminators, as Chalk mentioned, against the task of exploring a Space Hulk. And of course, the other player got to play the Gene Stealers that were
Mhm.
infesting it. A second edition was released in 1996, and the third edition came out in 2009. And with the third edition coming out, that's the one that's really known for its awesome models. Those are some of the most sought after Dark Angel Space Marines models, Terminators that exist. And it also has the really cool model of the dead Terminator in the throne
Yeah.
that I tracked down through a third party seller. That's the only piece of the board game I own. It cost me more money than I'd like to admit, but we were able to cast it so we can use it as terrain pieces if we want. So that's cool. But it's this awesome piece. And yet, yeah. And each edition, not a lot changed. I'm assuming. So I've only played the 2009 version of the game. I take that back. I've played second edition too. And I don't remember there being a heck of a lot of difference between the two of those. And
I don't know if it's actually changed much.
I don't think I think the models have gotten better. The artwork has gotten
Do we want
better
to talk about the weird bit of Dark Angels lore that came out of it?
out of the first one. Yeah, yeah. Hit us with the
Okay, so this is why Terminators are white and why they have feathers is because coming out, there was an article and a short story in White Dwarf for that coincided with the release of Space Hulk, and they talked about how the Dark Angels were Native Americans. They came from a Native American culture. That's where the feathers came from. And Terminators don't wear white. What happens is every time they're wounded, where they're wounded, they replace the armor with white armor. So they slowly go from green to white. And
interesting.
they
Okay.
built up this whole backstory with this. They're basically plains culture, Native Americans on this planet. And they built up this whole spiritual thing. And it, as you know, Dark Angels are very much King Arthurian, and it didn't last very long. And then they got Caliban. But yeah, that's the Deathwing were Native American warriors.
And pretty common in this era too of lore. Obviously the Attilan Rough Riders are also from this era of lore, and they very much had some connection to Attila the Hun.
Yeah,
Obviously, the
they're very
Mongols,
subtle.
that the Mongols and the White Scars. There was a lot of attempting to embrace wokeness before wokeness was a
Yeah,
thing, and before there was a lot of cross understanding. None of the conversations that we've had in 20 by the year 2024 had happened in 1980. So companies like Games Workshop that were doing this sort of inclusive stuff were doing it to be inclusive. They weren't doing it to talk crap on
yeah.
or
They
spite another culture.
And remember, this was a bunch of English lads writing about Native American based cultures or Mongol based cultures, and they were just taking the high points and
Yeah.
grafting it on. Um, and know that that has been the Native American aspect has been explained away. I forget how they did it. Basically, they did a. This isn't a retcon.
Yeah, yeah, they changed up the way that the lore
And no, they
works.
they acknowledged it was there, and they explained it somehow that it was a dream or something like that.
Right. Here is
Those are some really nice
man,
sculpts.
that this guy, yeah, there's some
It
very,
should be
very nice
green
sculpts in the
or
2009.
white, actually.
I want to say the third edition one specifically went to, and this happens a lot as Games Workshop releases new stuff. They change the in-house army, the core
Yeah, they
army,
do.
essentially. And I think by the 2009 release of Space Hulk, they weren't Dark Angels anymore. I think they're Blood Angels. By third edition, Space Hulk was Blood Angel Terminators. That's why they're
Okay.
red.
Yeah, Space Hulk Blood
And
Angels,
they're red on the official box art and everything too.
$125 in stock
Oh yeah, yeah. And
for
finding
8.
these like finding these 6 or 8 guys or whatever it is a ridiculous task. But speaking of, before we move into our next topic, or into the next game that we're going to talk about, one of the things that I wanted to point out was in third edition, the box was Dark Eldar. They weren't Drakari yet. It was Dark
Yes.
Eldar versus Black Templars. And that's important to note because in what was it, second edition, they were Blood Angels. In first edition, they weren't anything. But the studio army was Blood Angels. In second edition, it was Dark
Mhm.
Templars in third edition, and it will change for fourth edition. And then we will hit a pattern which has repeated up until today. I just keep in your mind, guys, that before fourth edition,
Yeah, the studio armies would
the
change.
Space Marine chapter that was being featured changed. Well, that'll bring us into talking about. So we just talked about a little bit of lore. So let's talk about a little bit of extra lore. So around this time, Warhammer Monthly started being released, and Warhammer Monthly was an anthology comic book which launched in March of 1998. It ran for 86 issues until December of 2004, with the last 2 issues being published under the Warhammer comic title. They essentially moved it to a different company, a different publishing house. Games Workshop stopped publishing it. Black Library stopped publishing it. It went to a different publisher. They renamed it Warhammer Comic. It didn't really do that well. And now, fast forward to today, we have Warhammer comics that are like serialized comics. But back in the day, these featured short stories and short runs of serialized comics, a lot more like heavy metal magazines. So you might get an 8-page spread on a character doing some stuff in the Warhammer 40k universe, and then there would be a 5-page spread of a fantasy character. Maybe it's Gotrek and Felix doing something, and then there would be like a 2 or 3-page segment of some guys in Necromunda doing something, and then maybe some Inquisitors doing something. It bounced around. Now you would get the full comic, you would get your full, whatever it is, 25-page run throughout like 3 or 4 Warhammer monthlies, but you wouldn't get
Yeah.
them all in one.
I don't remember the.
I have 11 through 65 on my shelf with a couple of like outliers. I am working on getting the rest. Getting all of the Warhammer monthlies is really, really, it's like one of my like Black Library, my
So
personal
it's
Black
I
Library
noticed it doesn't have
goals.
any Comic Authority stamp on it. So these
Nope.
are I remember the heavy metal magazines. I remember they were definitely adult themed. I assume these are
Oh,
too.
these are definitely adult themed, and you can see the Black Library logo has started to show
Mhm.
up. So this is kind of that beginning of the Black Library. A lot of what was done for the Warhammer and Warhammer 40k worlds was that they introduced a lot of these like special characters, a lot of people that we know by name today. And then in the December 2002 issue, the comic book was called Warhammer Warped Visions, and it featured one-shot variations of Black Library's most popular comics, but with their settings reversed between Warhammer and Warhammer 40k. For example, the Dark Elf Malice Darkblade was portrayed as a female Dark Eldar named Malice, while the Titan Imperius Decado was shown as an Imperium, as an Empire, not an Imperium, as an Empire steam tank. So they kind of flop.
That'd be sort of
Yeah.
cool to see that.
For context, Horus Rising, which is the first book of the Horus Heresy, and it's truly the beginning of the expansion of 40k lore through the Black Library, was published in 2006. So I think a lot of what we're seeing here is the fact that Warhammer Monthly, the fact that Black Library kind of started to take off. So 2001, there's a lot of things that get published between 2001 and 2006 through the Black Library on the 40k side. The biggest ones are basically Dan
Mhm.
Abnett books, and we'll get back into it. And here's a little tiny thing. Dan Abnett is not just a writer for Warhammer 40k. Now he's just a Warhammer 40k writer. He's very much settled into being like
Yeah.
the Warhammer 40k writer, if you want to say. But his background is in writing television and comic books. He's written several episodes of Doctor Who, several episodes of Star Trek. He wrote several comic books. He wrote for, not penned, he wrote for Spider-Man at one point. So Dan Abnett has this history. And I think just a tinfoil hat moment, as Dan Abnett is translating out of comics and into novels, we see the Black Library evolve from comics into novels. And I don't know if there's any correlation between that. It could just be that the monthly anthology comic was dying. It could be that, they just weren't seeing a return. I don't know. I'm just laying it out there.
That's an interesting idea. One of the problems, or not, it depends on how you look at it. Dan Abnett has seriously his vision has become the setting for better or for worse. In that he has really through his books, and then at one point they basically said, "Okay, we got to get our shit together and everybody get on the same page." But his writing has really define the setting. And there's some people that
Yeah.
don't like that. I know that they take a. I was going through a thing on Reddit, and somebody said indelicately, uh, Abnett's been smelling his own farts too much. Basically, in relation to the Inquisitor series, which is one of my favorite series.
A lot of people don't like that he switched to a female main character.
I didn't even know it was about that. I just thought they don't like the whole Inquisitor series and how it's sort of like gone away from the homoerotic Space Marine v Space Marine sort of thing.
Yeah, there's two.
Sorry about everybody when I
Yeah,
said homoerotic. I know I just triggered like a whole bunch of people, but I was meaning as I backtrack as fast as I can. Space Marine against Space Marine really reminds me of the volleyball scene in Top Gun.
just oiled men playing volleyball.
Yes.
I think you're striking something, and what that is that Abnett has always focused on the world, not the male power fantasy. And there is another writer who we've defamed in the past, and I'm gonna hesitate to say his name all the way because I feel that he's starting to kind of get too much or he did for a while get way too much negative credit. But he's very well known for changing the lore around Space Marines in fourth, fifth, and sixth edition. Um, his name is kind of vehemently spat by old timers because of the amount of focus that went onto Space Marines during that time. But I think that that's really what's happening. What's happening is that Abnett focuses on the
Hmm.
world and the way that people work in the world, and the other camp is literally just I want to see people that don't look like me get smushed by guys in big power armor.
I haven't gone through all the Gonskos. Just listen to the first one again. I think when I was trying to read it, I didn't like it that much, and I don't know why. Because now I'm like, oh, this is a great book. But
Yeah.
the Gonskos, the Inquisitor series, I like the books that are set in a smaller.
Well, it's a relatable world. It's
Yeah,
difficult to relate to a Superman figure, and I don't. If you're listening to us and you really like Space Marines and you really like the superhuman superhero side of stuff, I think that's awesome. I very much, I think a lot of it's really cool covering the Horus Heresy stuff. We're definitely getting into some really cool and interesting stories that just center around Space Marines dealing with one another. There's just a level of power fantasy creep that happens with it. It's like playing certain video games from the 90s where everything was about like, well, I can pick up and throw a tank, or I can kill 70 million bad guys with one swing, or my gun never runs out of ammunition. There's definitely that like Doom guy aesthetic to Space Marines. And it's not bad. It's not wrong. It's just not the most interesting to certain people. And it doesn't flesh out the world at all. And I think that's kind of what happens. I think that if you're introduced to the Space Marine side of it, you're a little bit less interested in the Inquisitor side of it. And if you're introduced to the Inquisitor side of it, you're a little less interested in the Space Marine side of it, maybe. I don't know how that breaks down, but yeah, I've encountered the two major complaints that I've seen are that Abnett doesn't focus on Space Marines, which is funny considering Abnett is the reason that we have the Horus Heresy. Don't kid yourself. That guy, if you like a Horus Heresy book, there's a real good chance that he was involved in making sure that it got written. Um, but the other thing that I've heard a lot of people complain about, especially recently, is they don't like that the third Inquisitor series focuses on a female character named
yeah,
Beckwin. And I think that's kind of dumb, especially in the Warhammer 40k setting. Like I one as a gaming group, and I don't mean to offend anybody. I do mean to
yeah.
offend
You are.
people's
Yeah, you do.
sensibilities.
Just go
If
ahead.
I'm offending you right now, I'm not sorry. This game is for everyone, and I mean that. I want everyone who walks up to a table to enjoy one of my favorite games. I want everyone who walks up to the table to enjoy the stories I enjoy. I don't want to ever put anybody into a position where they feel unwelcomed playing a game or engaging in a story. And the fact that we kind of still have these threads of like, boys are better than girls, and the reverse, girls are better than boys. The fact that these two concepts kind of still bounce around irritates the shit out of me. And the fact that we don't accept people who don't identify as either also bugs the shit out of me. Like at the end of the day, people are people. Like it's that meme where you've got the 4 different races talking about where they're fighting. And the Space Marine is like, I fight because the Xenos are awful. And then the Dark Eldar is like, I fight to capture slaves. And then the Eldar is like, I fight to rescue my dying race. And then it gets to the Orc, and it's the Mr. Fantastic pointing, or not Mr. Fantastic, Mr. Incredible pointing at the table, where in the movie where he goes, math is math. He's telling his son math is math, but it's Mr. Incredible illustrated as an orc, and he's pointing at the table and he's saying fight is
Yeah.
fight. Like that's it. Like it's literally a game about silly space fighting. Like welcome everybody.
Every
It should just be as inclusive as possible, because that's the only way you're ever gonna meet and engage and have fun and grow, in my
and
opinion.
Gobbo is now been ranting for a little bit, which is okay.
A
Um,
tiny second, sorry.
no, everybody has their own personal, and you know what? I like a good Space Marine. I just like I have a hard time relating to the Space Marines, how they're usually written, mostly because I've probably read some of the worst Space Marine
The
books.
worst books.
Like what's
Yeah.
the Ultramarine Omnibus?
Yeah, that one's not. There's good lore in there. There isn't necessarily a good story in there, if that makes
Yeah.
any sense.
I like the Return of the Lion, or the Forest Lord or
Well,
whatever
and
it is.
I love the Gotrek and Felix books, and I'll tell you, like, I will fully admit off the bat, they are not high epic
No, they
fantasy.
aren't.
They are literally a story of 2 guys slaughtering and whoring their way through
Yeah.
absolutely everything. And like it's okay. And to tie back into the end of the conversation about Warhammer Monthly and the development into the Horus Heresy with Black Library, Gotrek and Felix did to Warhammer Fantasy what the Horus Heresy has done to Warhammer 40k.
Yeah. And a lot of people really like the Horus Heresy, and I am not going to bash it anymore because we've lost enough viewers already with this segment. So, but
If you're
yeah,
here, yeah, yeah. I fight that there.
with
They know that we
with my
like.
homoerotic stories of Space Marines.
I mean, come on. The very very famous text. If the Emperor had a text to speech, um,
Okay.
a device YouTube channel, had an entire like subplot about the 3 custodes, that the banana boys that oiled themselves up and slithered on each other all the time. I don't think anybody here really like doesn't see what's going on sometimes in these stories. But talking about Dan Abnett, let's get into the game Inquisitor, which was a specialty game that was in the 54 millimeter size. So this was a tabletop miniatures skirmish game that was produced from 2001 to 2005. And while it was a larger scale than Warhammer 40k, it allowed players to field small tactical inquisitorial forces or pull from the huge rogues gallery of 40k's denizens, including space marines, rogue traders, and text priests. Or if you were on the opposing side, you could play Chaos Lords, Demons, Mutants, and even Gene Stealer cultists. The game focused on a small group of player characters and was much more like the original feel of a role playing game.
I never saw it.
Oh, annoyingly, even though I owned Eisenhorn and the book, it was impossible to find the miniatures unless you ordered directly from from Games Workshop's catalogs. Do you remember the catalogs?
Oh yeah, I remember the catalogs.
That was like the only way you could get Inquisitor models.
So this was, I assume it was on a smaller scale than Kill Team or Necromunda, because it wasn't on a large map and the miniatures were larger, so that
Yeah,
everything
they're about
had to be, I
yeah,
mean, technically they're almost twice the size. If they were
yeah,
28
they're twice the
millimeter to
size.
54 millimeter, right? That's back when
Yep, yep,
this was back. Remember, this was back when 40k models actually were 28
yeah,
millimeter.
yeah.
So they're about twice the size. How big was the playing field, the map, or the board game?
It was, I believe it was 4x4. It's a
Yeah,
4 foot
so
by 4 foot.
we're basically like groups of like 5 people on a like 5 characters on a side.
Yep, 5 versus 5. It was very much It had a lot of Necromunda feel to it. It had a lot of Kill Team feel to it. It had a lot of Mordenheim feel to it, but it was a smaller group, essentially, just a smaller group of guys. Now, Inquisitor,
Was there terrain that went with it?
there was a lot of how to build terrain for it, and
Okay.
there was a lot, and that's actually one of the things. So that there's a lot of discussion. In the Inquisitor game is one of those games that, like, rules wise, did a lot of stuff really well. And a lot of people are in this weird stance where they're like, why did this game fail? And a lot of the conversation behind why it failed was, one, it was impossible to get the models.
Yeah.
So it didn't matter. Like, you could buy the book anywhere Games Workshop stuff was sold. And if you were lucky, you could get what I got, which was the book and Eisenhorn in 54 millimeter as a set. And that's what I got. It was like the starter set. But that gave me that meant that me and my buddy at the time, Gabe, who both played Warhammer 40k, we both had Eisenhorn. So it was one model versus one model. We couldn't get any other models. I really wanted to do Chaos just because I wanted to do something different. And I just couldn't get the models. And even ordering them from the catalog was like, I mean, I it's difficult to explain the aggravation of catalog ordering
Yeah.
because I realize because I was born between two generations, the generation of second day delivery and the generation of catalog ordering was normal. But there was a massive frustration of knowing that if I could find the store, I could buy it immediately. But I couldn't find the store, so I had to order it through a catalog. Like, there was such a massive frustration of having to wait that like 3 or 4 weeks. And there would always be something like, I don't know, when you're 20 years old, when you're 20, 21 years old, I can pay a bunch of money today to not get something for 4 weeks, meaning that I may not have money that I need for other
Yeah.
things in those 4 weeks. Like, that becomes the equation. Uh, that was a huge problem. The second problem was there was no on-shelf terrain in 2001. like there was not, you could not buy. Oh, I take that back. You could get the trees and the corner ruins that came in the third edition box. Do you remember those?
Yeah.
That was it.
You had a picture of that up on the screen not too long
Yeah,
ago.
I did. And I think it came with oil barrels and ammo crates, right? That was the other thing that was in there. It was oil barrels, ammo crates, 2 corner ruins, and trees.
Yeah.
That was it. That was official terrain. All of the terrain that you would need to play Inquisitor, you had to make. And like, Eric's Hobby Shop, another great channel on YouTube, has talked about it. I feel like Ninjon has talked about it, and I know that I've had conversations with content creators aside, at events and through social media, as like we kind of talk about all this stuff, that the general consensus is the lack of playable terrain and the lack of access to figures killed the game. It didn't matter how good the game was because you couldn't play it, essentially.
Yeah. And that's why I never played it. That's why I've got no experience with it, because
Man,
you flip through the catalog, you're like, oh, this is cool. I'm not doing this.
right. Well, and wouldn't this be the perfect opportunity for Games Workshop to release an STL line? Release the Inquisitor models as STLs, relist the book at put hardback to make your money, because
Yeah.
that's what they like to do. Release the hardback book as a special edition for fucking $60, and then sell the STLs as a kit for like 15 or 20 bucks. Like, it's not a game, it's not a property you're currently making money on. It's just sitting there. I mean, like, it's there. I mean, like, it's printing money at a certain point. Like, how many of the old timers would just play it because it was back? Like, and maybe it's a shit game. I don't know. Like, I never played
I
it.
know somebody's redoing it at like a smaller scale, like a really small scale, like 6 millimeter.
Yeah, I heard of 6 millimeter
So what you
Inquisitor.
could play that on a 1 foot by a 1 by 1.
Right, exactly. You could play it on a super tiny board. I wouldn't mind playing. I wouldn't mind having official Games Workshop 54 millimeter or even 72 millimeter models, though, because that's something that I would print out, paint, and put on my bookshelf. You know what I mean?
Yeah, might have to look at some 54 millimeter prints to do. Non Games
Yeah,
Workshop, generic sci-fi
prints. Yeah, like
prints.
or like stuff like Witch
Yeah.
Song Miniatures, where it's like cool fantasy stuff. So Inquisitor was very much, obviously, as I'm sure you picked up, because you said that you never had any
No.
experience with it, but is very much driven by the character of Eisenhorn. And it made famous by Dan Abnett and his first trilogy of books, which were released between 2001 and 2002. As I mentioned earlier, Abnett was also very, very involved with comics. So that's one of those things with the Warhammer Monthly connection.
Did he have the rest? Were there models for the rest of his troop, or was it just he was the only named one? Did he have any of his?
There were a couple. So Tiberius, the guy that the Witchfinder that's like hunting him down, he had a model. There was a Space Marine captain. There was a Imperial Guard soldier.
But those weren't those weren't any of the named characters from the book. They don't look
the
like
only
them.
The only other character from the Inquisitor books was Tiberius or Tiberius. Is it Tiberius or Tiberius? You know who I'm talking about, right? Ravener had a model later, but it was pre-chair
Ravener.
And then Khal Jericho and Scabs had models from, who will be made famous through Necromunda, but they were part of, So there was definitely very famous characters that ended up in it. There was a Space Marine. There was one of the few at the time named Space Marine captains had a 54 model. And I'm feeling like if I can see, there was an aggro flagellant that was pretty cool. There was a demon host. There was Cherubiel. The named demon host had a model. So there was definitely stuff from it. One of the other Inquisitors, like one of his rivals, also had a model at one point. But yeah, I mean, it was cool. It was very neat. The death cultists, the gals with the really skinny blades that he employed, they had models. They came as a set. Well, I don't know if they came as a set, but there were two of them. But yeah, it was a cool book. And while the game died, the idea of small skirmish scale 40k battles didn't die. And we will get back to that when we talk about the release of 4th edition here in a couple of minutes. But yeah, I mean, so you had no experience with Inquisitor.
No.
Now what's the game I'm missing? Because we're up to 20. We're up not to 20. I almost said 2003. We're up to 2003. Was there? I know we talked about Epic 3rd edition. There wasn't really an Epic 4th.
Yes, there was.
There?
That was. Why did I just blank out on? So it was released by Specialist Games. There was only a rule book. There were no miniatures released with it, and it was Epic Armageddon.
Okay, so we talked about Epic Armageddon right before third. Okay, so
Epic
So we're caught up with the 6mm games essentially, right?
Yeah, and then that was basically the end. I mean, we're not talking about, I mean, there was also, the space fleets, Armada.
Right, Battlefleet
Gothic was in there.
Did we talk about Battlefleet Gothic last time?
I don't think we did.
Uh-oh.
Battlefleet Gothic was spaceships.
Was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, Battlefleet Gothic was spaceships. Space fleet battles? How would you describe Battlefleet Gothic, I guess?
It was a skirmish game played with spaceships.
Okay.
Basically, because you didn't have that many ships on a side. I don't remember.
Yeah, it was only like 5 or 6. I mean, I've got.
And it was the same thing. Like for fantasy, they had like Warhammer Fantasy Armada or something like that.
Fantasy fleets.
Fantasy fleets. It was the same thing. That's where you could actually play. What was it? Orc Pirates was an actual faction. But yeah, Battlefleet Gothic
was 2004 through 2005.
Okay,
so it's
just right after.
Yeah, we're just getting to that era. But yeah, Battlefleet. That's a good. I didn't write down Battlefleet Gothic, so I'm glad you brought it up. But yeah, it was like Star Wars X-wing. If you're familiar with like a modern game.
Except it was Star Wars X-wing had X-wings.
Star Wars Armada. That's the one with the big capital ships.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because Battlefleet Gothic was all capital ships. And it was neat because they at this time, getting into 4th and 5th edition as we're getting kind of close to that time period, you could play in narrative campaign modes where it would start off with a Battlefleet Gothic mission, and then you would go down to the planet and you could do your like 500 point game escalation up, and it would be like whoever won in the fleet got. I remember there being a lot of really cool like crossover
Yeah.
narrative stuff that was happening at the time.
Well, technically, what you could do, and this I always think was sort of the idea in the back of Games Workshop's head, that you could start by playing Battlefleet Gothic and then move down to like the 6 millimeter with Epic Armageddon or any of the epics, and then move down. You notice how all these games are basically just scale games, and then you move down to 40k,
Yeah, they're just
and then you
different.
move down to Kill Team. And these models were
Yeah.
great.
There was also there was a Star Trek game, Star Trek Fleet Command, which was out about the same time Battlefleet Gothic was out.
It's a great idea, but you can't really. I mean, the whole thing is you're trying to do space combat in 2 dimensions, which
Yeah. Yeah. You're playing a fleet board game, like an Age of Sail fleet board game
yeah.
essentially.
But then the models were really cute, cool. You would have like Orc Rocks. You had
Yes.
the Eldar
The
ship. The
Corsairs.
Corsairs were really cool too.
Yeah, and I mean they got all the way up through Tau, just kind of putting it between 4th and 5th edition. There were Necron, there were Tau, and of course there's been so Battlefleet Gothic is one of the games that if you're lucky enough, it used to be linked on their site. I don't think it is anymore, but just like Mordenheim, you used to be able to get the rules for free. Games
You
Workshop had the
still
rules hosted for free.
Specialist Games website is still active.
Oh, cool. Yeah, you can probably
You
go
have
in
to
and get
dig
them.
it out. It is the old one, and it is showing its age, but you can still find it. And
Yeah.
for all of you, I will try to dig it up again, and we will post that on the website. It's hard to find, but you don't have to go to
Yeah.
Wayback Machine. It's still active.
And it's beautiful because if you're a crazy person like me, you print it and then you have it professionally bound into a book, which is how I have a Battlefleet Gothic book. Right after Inquisitor, before Battlefleet Gothic, right after Inquisitor, we kind of jumped a little bit, but Battlefleet is not something that I remembered to write down. So I'm really glad you brought it up, Chac. There was the Horus Heresy Trading Card Game, and this was released in 2003 by Sabretooth Games. The Horus Heresy TCG generated most of the amazing art that we've come to associate with Warhammer 40k. It was positioned, obviously, to compete against Magic the Gathering, and the game placed players as warring commanders who fought over the fate of a planet during the events of the heresy. The expansions, which were released up until 2008, each had a set that focused on a new world to expand the conflict. So the first game dealt with, I think, Malcor 5, and then every expansion after just picked another planet that was part of the Horus Heresy action. And the way at this point, this is 2003. Horus Rising doesn't release until 2006. So this is literally just some of the illustrators that are just powerhouses in the Warhammer world, like Adrian Smith and John Blanche. And then they were joined primarily by the German fantasy artist Franz Vohwinkel. I think that's Vohwinkel.
Lieber? Oh,
But
I'll
so
see
yeah,
somebody
Adrian
else.
Smith, John Blanche, and Franz Vohwinkel, these guys made so much art that just centered around. I mean, think of Magic the Gathering, all of these beautiful illustrations that are on a card. And like, there's two ways to appreciate Magic the Gathering. You can really like the game, dope, cool on you, or you can really, really like the art. I was always into Magic and Horus Heresy Trading Card Game because of the art. I thought the art was amazing. And they always had these little like flavor text things. And that was it. That this is the level of expanding epic. They're at a point where they're like, well, let's start expanding this epic thing a little bit. So they did a trading card game. And that's where we got a lot of just this stuff that's like the bedrock of what the novels are based on, essentially.
At this point in time, I was trying to play Vampire the Masquerade trading card game because I had a friend that was into that. And I
There
didn't
was
get
a
it.
VTM.
I
Yep.
like bought a whole bunch of cards. I'm like, now what?
Yeah, right. The big games at the time were this is the heyday of me working for Wizards of the Coast, by the way. So at the time, there was Magic the Gathering was top. Pokemon and Legend of the Five Rings shared the second place string. Yu-Gi-Oh and Horus Heresy played the third-rate string, and then there was just a handful of other, like Vampire the Masquerade. Do you remember Lunch Money?
No,
Lunch Money was a combat card. Lunch Money is one of those games where like you buy one deck. You don't have to buy expansions. You just buy
I
one
never
deck.
really got into card games. Sorry, Emmy. I don't.
Well, we'll eventually get you into card games. I mean, it'll be like lunch money
I
or
then I don't
weed, but
understand the card games that you play on your like phone. Card battle.
oh yeah, that's what a lot of these have become. Like Horus Heresy Legions is a mobile card game. Like you can buy, and again, most of the art's really cool. I don't like the microtransaction parts of it, but
Oh yeah, and the my pet peeve. So with like Warhammer Tactics or whatever, and because I fly,
Tacticus,
that's when I usually only time I play games. Why do these solo
I
games
can't.
require an internet connection?
Well, because Warhammer Tacticus has an entire guild. So I played Warhammer Tacticus. I'm not gonna lie, for about a month. It's still installed on my phone. Um, it's got like once you get past like power level 10 or whatever, they're like, oh yeah, there's guilds and you can engage in combat with other people. And I'm like, I didn't want any of this.
Yes. I
This
want
is
a
not what I
solo
wanted.
game. If I wanted to like
Yep.
talk to people, I wouldn't be doing a podcast. I would be out actually talking to people in real life.
Hey, you're talking to me, man.
Yeah, you're a little thing down here.
I'm just a little face on your screen. I'm just a talking head. I'm just a man in the
Yeah,
box.
I know you well enough now. I could actually interact with you face to face.
I get you. My two like my two old guy gripes are why is everything an app? Why do I need an app for everything?
Oh, my wife
Like,
just pulled that on me. I'm here like, oh, our irrigation system. We can do that wirelessly on the app. She's like, why is there an app for everything? I just want to turn it on.
yeah, just want to say, well, no, I went into AutoZone, and they're like, what's your frequent customer like buying app? And I'm like, can I just give you my phone number that I registered? No, no, no. Now we have to scan the app. Well, I don't want to download your app.
Yeah.
I'm going to be in AutoZone maybe twice a year. Why do I
Why
need an app
does
for that?
why does my range fan, the fan above my stove, have a Wi-Fi connection and an app? Why? Will you tell me
Oh my
why?
God.
I can almost consider why the oven might want one, so I could turn it on remotely, but I still have to put food in there. What, I'm going to let raw food sit in my oven until I decide to turn it on later?
Yeah, right.
No. No, these things
My
don't need apps.
my garage door has an app. I can wirelessly open it from anywhere
Oh, I
that I
use
have
that
a
all the
phone
time.
signal. Oh, you do
Uh,
use that part? Okay.
yeah, because yeah, I use that every once in a while. When I leave the garage door open, I don't wanna walk outside to close it.
There you go. Okay, I can see why that would be helpful. So
Yes,
next
and you could
up,
give that code to Amazon so they can open your garage door remotely and leave their packages inside, and you're like, "I'm not giving my
yeah,
garage door code
I,
to Amazon."
I'm not giving the Amazon delivery guy access to all my power tools. That's insane. So next up, we've got Necromunda, which was released in
Yes.
2003. So
I wanted to play this game so bad. I had the rule book, I had models, I wanted to build all the terrain, I had
and
nobody to
nobody to
play it
play with.
with.
And okay, so here we go. Chalk caught me in a little bit of a lie with what he just said. There were terrain sets you could buy at this point. They were cardboard with like plastic edge connectors. I
Yes.
lied. There was official games because Necromunda came with a bunch of it.
Necromunda, I
That
thought
honestly,
was the
oh my god, that
coolest
that cardboard
idea when it
terrain.
came out. I love it, and I
Yeah.
still love it, but I don't think anybody around me. There's some people that play Kill Team, but nobody plays Necromunda, and I'm like,
The-
"Why?"
I I would dig a little deeper because I found I was at a 30K event and we got into talking about the podcast and I brought up the Underhive and like how we're building lore for the Underhive. And one of the guys was like, "Oh, that's dope. I'd like to see some of that stuff. I've been looking to custom make my own Necromunda army to play with my Necromunda group." And I was like, "There's a Necromunda group?" And he's like, "Yeah, there's like 90 of us that play in the city." And I'm like, "You got to be kidding me." like no one talks about it. There's like 3 discords that are just specifically the city I live in There's one for the Horus Heresy. There's one for
Really?
Age of Sigmar, and there's one for 40k. And it's all the same people that are in all of them. But apparently there's a Necromunda group that runs, and a Kill Team group that runs throughout that entire thing. That, like, I'm like, I could have fooled me.
There is one for me. There's one Discord for people around me. Club Smash. If any of you from Northern California are listening, call out to Club
Yeah,
Smash.
you
We
guys
need
need
to
to get
play
on it. You guys need to
Necromunda.
get
All right.
Chac into a Necromunda game. So this book, this 140.
Look at those are like Goliaths on the cover, aren't they?
Yeah, those are Goliaths. So it's a 148-page gaming source book titled Necromunda: The Underhive, and it finally collected everything from White Dwarf and put it into one place. So before this point, Necromunda was called Confrontation and was
Stupidest
entirely
game
published
name ever.
inside of
Not
White
game.
Dwarf. Name. Like how do you how do you IP that? Well, not only that, but Confrontation was kind of, so Laser
It sounds
Burn,
like a World War III modern
it really
combat
does.
nation v nation.
Yeah, it really does. So Laser Burn didn't really become Confrontation, but Confrontation borrowed a lot from Laser Burn. And Laser Burn was a very, very stereotypical late 70s, early 80s, or mid 80s, late 70s to mid 80s, I guess, sci-fi fantasy combat game where there were so many rules. And like, this is something that even plagues these style of games that, like for instance, Shadowrun is kind of known for this. Like, there are dice rolls in Shadowrun for figuring out where your grenade bounces the second or third time. Like that. Sometimes you don't need a rule.
Yeah.
There's a game master for a reason. But yeah, so Confrontation was kind of rules bloaty. But this saw basically everything put into one place, and the game just took off. And realistically, the Necromunda that was published in 2003 and the Necromunda that you can buy books for now, it's almost the same game. Like, the rules have got, it's like 40k. The rules have gotten tightened. Some new things have been introduced here or there, but everything from a lore perspective and everything from a functionality perspective is very much the same. We got a lot of really cool from Specialty, which you've mentioned a couple of times, from the Division Forge world. We got a bunch of really cool characters, including unnamed ones like Hive Scum and the Mad Max inspired Dome Runners, and others that are, living in service to the various gangs of Necromunda. Now, obviously, we have entire plastic lines. It's not only Resin Specialty, but we've got, Resin Specialty. We've got 2 squats. We've got the Rattling Cook. We've got a Rattling Sniper. We've got a lot of these really cool just characters. And then from the celebrated characters that were taken out of Warhammer Monthly or various publications of Black Library, we got the Mercantile Slavers Guild, we got Call Jericho and Scabs that were made infamous through Warhammer Monthly. In fact, Call Jericho's, all of his comics have been collected into a trade paperback. So if you can't get your hands on Warhammer Monthly, you can always try to find that trade paperback. And then we also got the Orlok Road Warriors and Slade Miranda and the Cyber Mastiff Macula, which again, these are guys that are getting new models now. I mean, updated
I
models
really
now.
want to dig into the Black Library books from Necromunda. I just don't know where to start.
I honestly would highly, highly recommend the Call Jericho Warhammer Monthly trade paperback. It is all of the Call Jericho stories collected. Give me 1 second. I could easily find it.
Okay.
So it's the Call Jericho one. It is Warhammer Presents Call Jericho. I don't know when it was published, but it is all of the comics about Call Jericho and Scabs, and that, Call Jericho is probably one of the most famous.
Oops, there goes my compressor again.
Is probably one of the most famous bounty hunters in Necromunda, I would say.
I'll have to look up. I really don't know a whole lot about. I only know a little bit about the lore.
Necromunda will definitely be something that we do a lore deep
Yeah.
dive into. One of these episodes, between our normal
I
content
think
will
I'm gonna
be
have to do
Necromunda
a deep
focused.
dive into the lore because it just I love reading whenever I read any of the stuff in the Black Library that deals with the sort of the small scale and talking about the hives and all. Right now I'm reading a Inquisitor-based book, on Terra, and they're talking about the underhives around the Imperial Palace. Um,
Yeah, you're reading the book,
the
the
the Kieran
Chambers,
Throne, I think it is.
and it takes place in the. Yeah, you shared it with me a couple of days ago, and my mind's blanking. But yeah, all that stuff is always.
It take it takes place right around the palace. It does have a Custodes in it, which reminds me back to I read the first of the Custodes book that is set in the Horus Heresy. That's making me want to start a Custodes army simply because it's a really small army. I mean, you could do a lot with it, but printing out a small army. I mean,
Yeah.
buying resin from Forge World and the plastic bits with the new. I'm reading the new. I'm reading the Codex right now, but
Oh, nice.
but yeah, no, I like whenever there's a good description of an underhive. I was reading in the second orc book from the Uftak Blackhawk, the second book, which actually doesn't have him in it. Part of it take
The Brutal and
the
Cunning
brutal and
series.
cutting series. In the second book, part of it takes place in the underhive of of a hive that the orcs are assaulting. And it's great. It's
Okay.
got an Eldar cult, worshipping cult in the bottom and a webway portal at the bottom of this hive.
You should check out, I think it's called Sepultura. It's a Warhammer horror novel. And it's set in 40k, and basically a plague of unbelief is spreading. Like, that's the setup.
Yeah,
So zombies in the Underhive is the setup.
that sounds cool.
It's really good. It's not that long, but it's really good.
Yeah.
And it so and Necromunda is, for those of you longtime listeners, those of you who are just joining us, go back and listen to everything. But those of you who are longtime listeners and those of you who work with us in our Discord, the Innsmouth Hive is essentially, we're developing a Necromunda, a Hive Primus style hive. Um, we're fleshing out everything. We're figuring out all the internal politics of one hive, and like it's super. Like, I feel the reason that it's happening is because we all kind of agree. Um, and the Marky and some of the older cast members also completely in agreement that, like, this stuff is the neat side of 40k.
Yeah.
The dark under, how normal humans deal with this universe is one of the more interesting aspects of it. Obviously that doesn't make a good war game. What makes a good war game is I want my 7 grav tanks, but
Yeah.
yeah, like I'll admit, we all want our knights and our big stompy titans. Like, let's be real.
No, but it makes a very good skirmish game. And
Mhm.
yeah, of course, everybody
The-
wants to have that huge centerpiece. You see people who have done these huge centerpiece battle boards for the hive. Yeah, we all want that. We all want that sitting in our room.
oh yeah,
But yeah, so Necromunda, I really think it was a great idea. And I'm glad this is one of the ones that has succeeded to a certain extent. I mean, it's never been super popular, but it's never gone away either. And, GW has tossed a lot of good games that just didn't pick up
yeah.
traction.
Well, and I feel that Necromunda, and that's one of the reasons that I feel that Necromunda must be doing a little bit better than we realize. It's kind of like Horus Heresy. Everybody has a tendency to, like, kind of discount 30k as being the, like, game no one plays. But then, like, when you find the 30k players, you're like, oh crap, there's a
There are a
lot of
lot
them.
of them.
Yeah.
And there aren't any around me, and I would love to do 30K. I love, especially they just came out with Mechanicus models in plastic, or do custodes that are both.
Oh yeah,
Technically, I
bring
could
them
play my
both.
knight army.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's the thing. Like, I talked to a TO about whether or not he would let me field my scimitar jet bikes in a 40k tournament, and he said no problem.
No, yeah. Oh, you did?
Um, yeah, he said no problem. He said just run them as outriders, and I'm like,
Hmm.
okay, cool. But I mean, like, that's obviously not a sanctioned tournament. No,
Yeah.
G-Dub's not going to let me run my 30k White Scars in a 40k
No,
tournament.
there
But
there were only
yeah,
a couple of armies that cross over:
yeah.
Custodes, Knights.
You
Although
would,
almost nobody runs a 100% Knight army is not viable in Horus
yeah,
Heresy, I understand. Mechanicus, you can't. They're once again, it's like you can't in all these you can proxy,
right.
but you can't in an official Sanctia tournament. You can't do it. They're only like those are the only
Yeah.
two, I think.
Which kind of sucks, but like I can kind of get it too.
Arbiter Ian has a whole big thing on how to get into Horus Heresy and how to proxy other GW kits.
Oh, cool.
There's a really good series on it. Anyway,
Yeah, so on to 4th edition, which was released in 2004. The 4th edition of Warhammer 40k was released in 2004. I just said that twice. This edition did not feature any major changes as prior editions had and was backwards compatible with each army's 3rd edition codicy. 4th was released in 3 forms. The first was a standalone hardcover version with an additional information, which featured additional information on painting, building scenery, background information about the Warhammer 40k universe, and some other stuff. It's actually one of my favorite core rule books because it's got some of the coolest how-tos in it. The
remember where you could build terrain?
Yeah, the 4th and 5th edition books have some great terrain builds in them. And when I've got a little bit more time, for those of you who know that we release all of our podcast episodes on YouTube, we also were doing terrain builds on YouTube at one point. When I've got time in my schedule again, I plan on going back and legitimately taking, hey, this is the ruins from the 4th edition core rulebook, and just doing a build and showing you how I would do it, because I think that would be really fun. It's literally just finding the time. So the second way that 4th edition was released was a box set called the Battle for Macragge, which included a compact softcover version of the rules, scenery, dice, templates, and Space Marines and Tyranid miniatures. And as you'll notice, Chalk, the Gene Stealers are part of this. So this is when the Gene Stealers were rolled into the Tyranids. I actually think it happened in 3rd, but this is the first time that we've got official.
Yeah, but and then you're just starting to get, and then the whole cult thing. I just really like the cult as being this alien cult that was completely separate.
Yeah.
And I don't know whose idea it was and why they decided to roll it in together.
And it all started happening around this time, by the way. We'll get to that here in a second. But so this game was based on the invasion of the Ultramarines homeworld. The set was intended as a game in a box, and it was targeted at beginners. So just like the 3rd edition box, this is everything you need to play a game against your buddy who you split the box with. The later expansion, The Battle Rages On, added new scenery, rules, and even introduced for the first time the Tyranid Warriors. The 3rd version of the book was a limited edition leather bound collector's book. I want to say maybe it wasn't leather, but yeah, it wasn't leather bound. It was leather and silver embossed. So it was like black leather with silver embossing. This, I believe, was the first time that the special edition core rulebook had become a thing. There had been soft cover and hardcover versions before, but there hadn't been an alternate cover yet. 4th is also the start of the kind of confusing and lawless rush up to 7th, where the codices weren't always updated for each edition. While 3rd edition had seen the addition of the Citan that helped flesh out the Necrons, it would be the 4th edition and the Apocalypse 1st edition that expanded into the idea of the Necrons actually having their own internal commanders. The back of the core rulebook brought back the idea of this small skirmish battle with a rule set for playing a game called Kill Team with 28mm heroic figures. The original Kill Team mission was one player defends a hard asset and the other guys attack a hard asset. However, in those rules, it explains essentially an almost Necromunda style. You win these points, you can spend them on your not Necromunda style, almost a Crusade style way of play. You win this number of points, you can move on. It's kind of that Inquisitor, Necromunda, Mordenheim feel being worked into 40k. So that Inquisitor stuff came back. It just came back with 28mm. And there would be further support for Kill Team that would be released through White Dwarf until the end of 7th edition, when something happened to Kill Team.
A little gripe. Why the
Yep.
hell do they have to have multiple rules for 28 millimeter skirmish?
Well, so Necromunda is gang based, Kill Team is military combat based, and Mordenheim is fantasy.
Exactly. Why can't they share a rule system?
I don't know. And the rule system they should share, honestly, would be Mordenheim's. Just flavor change all the text,
That's
because
what I'm saying.
Mordenheim's system is pretty damn good.
Or you could do the way that One Page Rules does, where they've got uh, fantasy skirmish and science fiction skirmish.
Well, and Frostgrave and Stargrave are the exact
Yeah.
same rule set. They just essentially change the flavor text depending on which
Yep.
book you buy.
I mean, there's really not that much difference between gangers, and you have military gangs and you've got scum gangs. That's
we
it.
we have a joke about it in the hangnail. The hangnail allows all gangs, including those that carry badges. Like, yeah.
And this was also the March for Macrog was also the March for the Blue Boys. I think
Oh
they've
yeah.
been. This was when they were introduced. They were back in the rotation as the studio army, and they
Good
stayed.
callback. Yep, this is when they were introduced as the studio army, and we're still stuck with them. although to be fair, it does feel like there's now multiple studio armies. It feels like the Ultramarines are still the biggest studio army, but it definitely feels like the Imperial Fists have gotten a lot of love recently.
Do you know how they're
So,
the studio army?
they're the easiest to paint.
Go to the Games Workshop website.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they're everywhere.
Look up any army and see what's the model for the Rhino, what's the model for the Repulsor, what's the model for any of this. Unless it has a specific thing,
Yeah.
it's always the Ultramarines model. That's the only one that they do.
But I mean, like, as far as the box sets went last year, there was the White Scars box set. There was they had the biker horde.
Yeah, but
They
the
had
actual
the
release
Siege
for 10th
Breakers.
edition was Leviathan, which was Ultramarines.
Ultras.
And the one before that was Indominus, which was Ultramarines.
Which was Ultramarines.
8th edition was
Ultramarines.
I forget what the flavor of it was.
It was the Primaris. It was Primaris. It was a Dark Heresy, which was Primaris versus Death Guard. Or Dark Imperium, excuse me.
So there you go.
Yeah. So the Ultramarines theme is starting, kids. It was also between 3rd and 4th edition that we would slowly see things like the Squats in their original form, the Sisters of Battle in their original form, and the Gene Stealers in their original form start to fall out of favor. Nothing had really been done officially yet, but they were largely unsupported since early 3rd, and no new models or new codices were on the horizon for any of these three armies. 4th edition also saw a redesign of the Necrons. This was the era that the Necrons finally got those clear green Goss Flare tubes that everyone fucking hated.
Yeah, just
because as soon as you put glue on them, they stopped looking right.
You have to be very careful, and then you have to like cover them up when you paint.
Oh yeah, it was such a pain in the. They were such a pain in the ass. I knew so many people who just repainted green over them, which I'm like, okay.
So a lot of the things they got their last codex. Remember, 2nd edition. Also, we talked about 2.5 because
there were a lot of 2.5 splats,
and then nothing happened with them until like 6th edition on a lot of these. And Eldar players are still playing with their old 3rd edition, 2nd edition models.
And the Assassins didn't get updated between 2.5 and like
ever
6 or 7 as well. However, they continued to get model releases, as to where the Sisters of Battle by 4th edition had largely gone to catalog order only. The Freebooter Gene Stealers were almost impossible to find, even in catalog. And the Squats were at the point where they weren't making them. The Freebooters and the Squats, they weren't making white metal for anymore. As to where the Sisters, they were still making white models, but it was just hard to get a hold of them. And honestly, it was 4th edition, in my opinion. 4th edition was the death of Sisters of Battle until they came back. And the Squat, it was the death of the Squats, it was the death of the Sisters of Battle, and it was the death of the Gene Stealer cult, at least the original Gene
Yeah,
Stealer
the
cult.
original.
Now we got Sisters of Battle, and we've gotten all three of these things back, but they're different versions. The one that's closest to its original would be Sisters of Battle. Not a lot changed, but
And that was the original codex of that was Witchfinder?
second edition.
Yeah, it was second edition Witchfinder, right?
No. Sisters of Battle. You're thinking fifth edition, which is what they tried to pull the fast one with making witch hunters
No,
and
no, no.
demon hunters the codexes.
That was fifth edition?
That's
I thought
fifth
that was
edition.
third.
Yeah, that second edition had the Sisters of Battle codex. There was a second edition Sisters. Well, there was a 2.5 edition codex for Sisters of Battle.
So the Inquisition codexes were fifth edition.
Or fifth edition. Yep.
I mean, I've got them on my hard drive, not like, real copy.
I have demon hunters and it's over there on the shelf, but I need witch hunter. So the other thing that came at the tail end of fourth edition was Apocalypse First Edition, which was released in 2007. This expansion to fourth edition basically set out all the rules for playing massive battles with your entire 40k collection, and introduced
This was 40K for rich people.
Yes, and introduced the idea of using 28 millimeter heroic scale super heavy takes and titans. By the way, if you make a 28 millimeter scale titan of one of the types, it is literally 400 feet tall. Like if you were to make it to scale, the 28 millimeter scale would be 400 feet tall.
Yeah. So they're and you could buy, these were some of the most expensive
Forge
models
World at the
coming
time.
out of Forge World. So the biggest plastic model right now, I believe, is the Orc Stompa, which
Yes.
comes to about the head of the Warhound Titan. It's a little smaller than but remember the head of the Warhound Titan is not at the top of the Warhound Titan.
It's hunched. It's a hunched
so
figure.
it's larger than that and much bigger in the other dimensions. But then you could also get get up to a Warbringer, I think. A Warlord Titan?
Yeah.
Yes, you could do a Warlord Titan in resin.
There are pictures online of people playing Apocalypse games with Forge World resin Titans that look like the people playing the standing chessboard, the living chessboard.
Oh no, there's a
That's
whole
how
group
big
of
these Titans are.
If you want to see some pictures and you happen to use the old person site of Facebook, check out the Titan Players page, and it's just Titan battles or the Titan Owners Club. That's it. It's the Titan Owners Club.
My buddy Ross Thompson from San Diego used to run a convention called Kingdom Con, and Kingdom Con was known in San Diego for being one of the only conventions that held Apocalypse games. And man, it just absolutely crazy, the size and scale of some of these games. And
I mean, so they started the largest 40K game that they have rules for now is 3,000 points. Apocalypse starts above that. They have movement trace and all. Basically, it was epic with 28 millimeter.
Yeah, with 28 millimeter.
And
a lot of the pieces, that you were playing with were things that at up until this point had only ever been released in Epic. Like even Bane Blades weren't really a thing yet.
Yeah. So if I'm looking at I need to put together I haven't finished building all my orcs, but I need to go through and count them up. I've got over if I'm playing like the 10th edition default detachment. The one that came out before the codex did, where you can basically use any unit. I've probably got 3,000 to 4,000 points.
Yeah, I was invited to an Apocalypse game on the 15th.
Not painted, by the way.
Yeah, and I'm not going because not enough of my orc stuff is painted. But I was invited to an Apocalypse game on the 15th, so I ran all my numbers. I have 5K in orcs, but 600 points is painted, so I'm not. I might go. I'll probably go and say hi to everybody, but I'm not going to play style thing because I always feel weird playing without at least primed models.
Yeah, I'd like to once I get this together, I'm going to add it all up, find a good app to let me do that in. So people say you can do Battle Scribe. You just do a point total of -1, and you just add everything in.
Okay.
And so when you go like army size, you put in -1.
Got you. I honestly just add everything and it throws errors at me and I ignore the errors. But
Yeah. But so you can put it all in so you can keep it as a catalog.
right, right.
There are a couple of other ones.
Yeah, I have my Eldar listed like that. If I were right now to pick an army I own to play an apocalypse game with, it would be Eldar because I have 4 Wraith Knights, a bunch of the super heavy tanks. I Eldar by far, just in foot sloggers alone, I have more models than any other army.
Well, if I built my knight army, I could probably do
Oh
it.
yeah. Oh
If
yeah.
I finish building it.
Introduction of Apocalypse First Edition was another first in a running trend that developed with GW, however, as between the release of Apocalypse First Edition 2007 and the release of Apocalypse Reloaded in 2013, which, by the way, is not the rule set for Apocalypse, which is news now, but between 2007 and 2013, they would basically just errata patch the rule set every time something came out. And it was just kind of an absolute pain. And the thing that doesn't make any sense about it is that they released the Apocalypse rules like 2 months before 5th edition dropped. So they released Apocalypse for 4th edition, 5th edition came out, and then immediately, like for 6 months, nobody knew what to do with Apocalypse until the errata came out. What do they call them? They now have a name for it because now they do it all the time. They update the rules every 3 months.
The Imperial Army or
Yeah,
the
it was Imperial armor back then,
armor.
but now they,
Mm.
every time the new data sheets come out, there's like a big to do. Like every 3 months, they change points values. This was happening with Apocalypse in 2007. The exact same thing was happening
By the way, they still host all the rules for Apocalypse.
for the original. Yeah, and you can also, I mean, the new Apocalypse is pretty cool. One of the cool things about Apocalypse is that
When you're saying new Apocalypse,
there's a new
what
version.
are you talking? There
Yeah,
is.
2018, there was an Apocalypse
Oh no,
release.
yeah, no. Those rules are online, free,
Oh, okay. Yeah, because there's supposed to be
along with all
there's
the data
supposed to be
cards.
a new version. They're supposedly fixing Apocalypse. We're supposed to be getting a new one.
Oh,
Um,
I'll buy into that. I don't know why, but I will.
yeah, Apocalypse is cool. One of the cool things about Apocalypse is that it's alternating turns. So like
Yeah,
my foot
it
sloggers
has to
fire
be.
and then your foot slug. Yeah. Which is it's such a
My
better way.
30,000. I move and fire my 30,000 points of orcs, and now it's your turn to move and fire your
That would be
30,000.
like a 7-day game. But
Yeah.
it's one of the things from Apocalypse that, in my humble opinion, should be dragged into normal 40k. Normal 40k should be alternating actions too. 100%.
Oh, definitely. 100%. By the way, there are a lot of people that do Apocalypse. They've adapted those games for like 8 millimeter or smaller, 10
Yeah,
millimeter, because
going back
the
down.
rules work so well, and they work at that up until it was a more modern rule set
Right.
that worked well with the small models. Now, of course, they've come out with Legions Imperialis,
Right.
which is actually just a throwback to second edition. But anyway, Apocalypse still has a place for that, and a lot of people were doing it with their before Legions Imperialis came out, so there was no support for epic scale battles. They were using it for all their 3D printed armies
They were just
and for
using
stuff, and
Apocalypse, but
they're just using Apocalypse rules. They
that's
weren't
awesome.
using the old epic rules, and a lot of people really, really like that.
I had a lot of fun. To me, there's something about the scale of 28 millimeter and how crazy the tables look when you do an Apocalypse game. I had a lot of fun when my 3,500 points of Tau and Marky's 3,500 points of Tau took on Tom and Kevin's whatever 7,000 points of Imperial stuff. It was a lot of fun to play, but again, that was two people's collections on each side. So that
Yeah.
7,000 versus 7,000 was 4 players. That it was a lot of fun just to see that many models on the table. 3 Storm Surges and 6 Riptides on a table is just crazy to look at. And I get, if it was all 15 millimeter, it'd probably be just as like cool. But there's something,
There's something about the bigger models.
there's something about the
and
bigger
that's
models.
I
Yeah.
really, really, really like Apocalypse.
Yeah, Apocalypse is a really cool
I
rule
really,
set.
really, really don't have
The space.
the painted armies to do it,
Yeah, right.
or even the assembled armies to do it. I've really got to finish assembling my orcs and start painting them because I want to know how many points I have.
I have 2 Warhounds. I really need to
I
finish
might
them,
start.
but
I might start
assembling a
reprint
Warhound?
assembling a warhound from little pieces of plastic.
Oh, there's a
I just
there's a guy I found online, on Instagram who's an engineer who has an entire series on Instagram of him building Warhound Titans out of plastic art. It's
wow.
pretty cool. A lot of dedication because it looks like they look fucking primo.
Yeah. I just and by the way, if you're one of those people who is into doing giant non-GW robots of that size, of a Titan size, don't do resin.
Yeah, oh my god. Yeah,
It just breaks.
yeah, yeah, you either have to mix something into it or yeah, it's
Just use filament. It's much sturdier.
yeah,
Or use filament for a lot of it and do the details in resin.
yeah. There, I can't remember what that style of printing is called, but where you do the core out of FDM and then you do all the details out of resin, there's a name for that.
Yeah.
Well, so next up, we have, and the last thing, or the second to last thing we're going to talk about today is 5th edition, which was released in July of 2008. While there are some differences between 4th and 5th edition, the general rule set share a lot of similarities. The codex books designed prior to 5th edition are all still compatible. So even though 4th didn't get all of the codexes updated, several of them did, and a bunch of splats came out. Splats being like half codexes, like the Catachan splat would be the example, even though I think that's technically a 3.5, not a 4.51. There was stuff like that that had happened. Replacement of the previous edition's Battle for McCraig starter set was called the Assault on Blackreach. This featured Ultramarines versus Orcs. So this is our second edition in a row that's been the
Mhm.
Ultras. This time, the Assault on Blackreach box featured a pocket-sized rulebook, which contained all of the rules but omitted all of the lore and all of the hobby sections of the core book, and a starter army of Space Marines, which was one captain, one 10-man tactical squad, one 5-man Terminator squad, one Space Marine dreadnought, and they were going against the Orcs, which was one war boss, 20 boys, 5 knobs, and 3 Def Coptas.
So these were and they dropped the price because they didn't have any terrain
Yes,
or I mean, I was being sarcastic. Did they actually drop the price?
they
They did
did.
because they didn't have a nice book and they
Yeah.
didn't have any terrain or anything?
Well, and the other thing was that they were again this was designed to be, a starter army, a starter box set, a start collecting set. It in Games Workshop's defense, in general, until the last 3 months, a lot of these like starter until the last until third to place this until second quarter 2024. There, if you're listening to this in like 2028, we recorded this in 2024. Until second quarter 2024's releases, Games Workshop has generally given a relatively good value to their starter box sets. Unfortunately, with the move to Combat Patrol and the way that they're re-gearing all of their starter boxes, they are getting worse and worse and worse. The value's
Yeah.
going
The
down.
newest Space Marine Combat Patrol has no vehicles in it.
Yeah, the value's going down, and it's becoming harder and harder to collect. And the thing that's weird, again, and I'll get off the thing that's dating us and being another ranty high horse, but the thing that's weird is it basically prices new players out, and
Mhm.
I don't know why, at the height, realistically, of the profits they've ever made, why that's the decisions they're making. But who knows? Maybe it's something that we're not seeing yet. I mean, there's a lot of times where we all get really, really irritated with Games Workshop because they do something and then like the full picture is revealed and we're like, okay, that's not that bad. So maybe I don't know. I don't want to guess too far in the future. Hopefully it is not a continuing problem. It's just a hiccup and a growing
Yeah.
pain. New additions to the rules in 5th included the ability for infantry models to go to ground while under heavy fire, providing additional protection at the cost of mobility and shooting as they dive for cover. Actual line of sight is needed to fire on enemy models. Also introduced is the ability to run. where units could forego shooting to move across ground more. It's called marching now. No, there's a name for it. These are all rules that kind of exist
Yeah.
now. Damaged vehicles was simplified and significantly reduced, and tanks could ram other vehicles. Some of these rules were modeled after rules that existed in second edition, but were removed in third. They just basically came back. Likewise, fifth edition saw a return to many units that had been cut out of previous editions for having unwieldy rules. These units have largely been brought back with most of their old rules streamlined for fifth. The release also focused largely on Space Marine forces, including the abolishment of the Demon Hunters in favor of the army composed of Grey Knights. Okay, so the Demon Hunters Codex and the Witch Hunters Codex, we were going to talk about this, came out at the end of fourth, beginning of fifth. And by the end of fifth, Demon Hunters was completely gone, and it was being reworked into the Grey Knights Space Marine chapter, which is now its own book.
Yeah.
And the elite choices for the Demon Hunter army list were all Grey Knights anyway. Another major change was a shift from metal figures to resin kits. So this is when the remaining white metal went to fine cast, or started to go to fine cast. Now, another thing that we didn't necessarily talk about in third and fourth, and one of the reasons that Sisters of Battle and Squats and Freebooter Gene Stealers went away was because this was also the time where a lot of the better selling models, or a lot of the models that moved volume, were going from white metal to plastic. We've talked about this. You and I have talked about this. You and I and Drew have talked about this a couple of times. There was a time where you bought a metal Terminator, and that metal Terminator came with plastic arm options, or you bought a plastic
I've
kit.
got some back there.
Yeah, that came with some metal options. And that was kind of more of a third edition thing. By fifth edition, a lot of that's gone. A lot of those hybrid kits are gone. They're just plastic. You also have fully plastic Terminator, not a lot, but you also have some
Well,
fully
you
plastic
didn't want kids
Terminators.
sucking on white metal.
Right? Yeah, right.
There was so much lead in the environment for our generation anyway.
And like, if you lost against somebody, you could kill them with your you could physically kill them with your model by throwing it.
You should see the size of some of the large epic models that were in metal, and some of the Battlefleet Gothic things that were in metal.
It's
They literally
insane.
weigh
And they're just all
pounds of
spikes.
friggin' metal.
And they're just
Yeah.
spikes. It's just all spikes and blades. I have a battle barge from Battlefleet Gothic, and it's literally like the size of a cell phone in white metal. It's heavy. It's probably 1.5 pounds. It's a ridiculous amount of metal. This was also the time where there was a huge push, at least on the West Coast of the United States, to come to competitive play and competitive events, and to have managed competitive events. This resulted in rule sets like ITC and WTC, which came out of this era. And a lot of that was realistically the first steps, which led to the tournament scene that we see today. A lot of that all came out of fifth edition, fifth to sixth edition. I mean, realistically, fourth and fifth edition was kind of the initial explosion in the US, in my opinion, of tournament play. But it was disorganized tournament play. This was not, Games Workshop wasn't showing up. This was people on the West Coast and in the United States organizing their own tournaments, and then Games Workshop kind of acknowledging it from afar, being like, oh yeah, hi. Obviously, Golden Demon was huge. This was when a lot of Americans started competing in Golden Demon championships. Yeah, so it's just an interesting time, realistically.
And then lastly, we wanted to talk about a little bit about role playing, which is 40k adjacent, I would say, because these are not GW products. They are put out by other companies.
Yes,
They are kind of which is weird.
they're
That
kind of
I mean,
supported.
GW sort of does. I don't know how much they oversee in either of these, but you have people writing lore and writing the setting that aren't Games Workshop. You have that these days with video games as well. But one of the interesting things is the time period it was set in, because
Yes. Yeah.
The first one was set from Black Industries, not Black Libraries, with their D100. Why did people like there's the D100 system? There's the D20 system.
They had to make their own
blah, blah, blah,
system.
blah, blah. I know. And it took place in M37. So this is, it's after the Heresy, right? Heresy was over basically in M31. And then there was very little lore until, after all, we are playing in 40k.
The 41st.
So there are callbacks to, they talk about, something happened. There was this founding to deal with this thing in M35 or whatever. But there's a really big blank space. I mean, part of that was filled in. M32 was filled in with the Beast Arises, the Orc stuff. But there's a big, there's a 10,000 year blank really between the Horus Heresy, which is now very well fleshed out, and mainline 40k that's very well fleshed out.
And then we just have kind of scant details.
Every once in a while something comes up, and these role playing games, especially we're talking about Dark Heresy, which you have there, and then Rogue Trader and all. So Dark Heresy, you took it was based around an Inquisitor, as you could see from the cover. I mean, basically, the only way you could do a role playing game anyway is either a Inquisitorial kill team or a Hiver, Necromunda style, because it's you have to have like 4 to 6 people playing and a game master. That's the only way it works. Anyway, it took place in the Ascalon sector, which I don't know if that actually exists in the main 40k or where that is.
It's near. It's actually near the Carcosan sector and near the Scaran sector, the Dan Abnett's sector. It's all kind of like, and it's very much what we're doing. We made our own sector, which is not official. And they made their own sector, which wasn't official.
So it's basically taking place anytime after M37. So about 3,000 years from between M37 and M40. Then they also released Rogue Trader, which I think is a great idea. I wish we could have Rogue Trader armies play on the tabletop. I think that would be really, really cool. And then the big publisher, though, of course, that we all know is Fantasy Flight Games. They took it over and published it for about 6 years before they stopped. And now it's being... I haven't seen anything from Cubicle 7. You've got down here that picked it up.
Yeah, Cubicle 7 picked it up now. So you can still get Dark Heresy. You can get most of the old. So there's Dark Heresy, Rogue Trader, Death Watch, Black Crusade, and Only War. There we go. I got them all out. Those were all the ones that were either Black Industries or Fantasy Flight. And Cubicle 7 picked it up, and you can get all of those as PDFs. And then Cubicle 7 makes Wrath and Glory, which is the new one. And Wrath and Glory is just like Only War. It's more focused on like guardsmen in the trenches, which it's a really interesting. You kind of brought this up. It's playing as a Death Watch Marine or playing in a Crusade or being an Imperial Guard. It's a very railroady experience for a role playing game.
Yeah. It seems to me you'd really be playing on rails. I think the best way to do it is either an inquisitorial team, not necessarily playing an inquisitor, but they've got interrogators and all that, and all their hangers on, because they can go anywhere and do anything, or a rogue trader, because he can go anywhere and do anything. Maybe a hive setting, because that's pretty open, sort of in the same way that that's very much a Shadowrun type role playing game. If you played in the hives, I mean, you could have warp fuckery and augmetics and the whole thing, so you could do that. But I think if you're playing a guardsman, you're just you're playing a grunt, so a sergeant and 3 privates are in a trench someplace.
Yeah, I'm sure there's ways to tell stories in that world, but it's not. I mean, my background is all in fantasy gaming and fantasy stories. So to clarify, Cubicle 7 has 2 rule sets: Warhammer 40k role play Imperium Maldictum, which takes place now in the Manchurian sector, and which is an actual sector. From what I understand, Cubicle 7 has a little bit more communication and direct oversight, and then they have Wrath and Glory. And it looks like, just on a basic quick look, it looks like Imperium Maledictum is a little bit more playing the Inquisitor side of things. It's the wrap up of Dark Heresy and Rogue Trader and the games that were a little bit more based in that world. And then Wrath and Glory is the wrap up of Only War, Black Crusade, and Death Watch. So you can play either the direct war side, or you can play the CD under Hive side.
I would be afraid that if you're playing Space Marines,
it's just combat.
It's just combat. It's power. You get the sort of thing. I don't care. Fuck it. I don't care how big the room is. I cast Fireball. Seems to me that would be what Plague Space Marines
are. There is
are.
no I in team, but there are 7 eyes. Yeah, there are 6 eyes, and fuck it, I don't care.
So you'd end up basically playing Kill Team.
Yeah,
especially if you're playing with miniatures, right? If you're doing how people like to do. When I played D&D, it was all pencil and paper and imagination. Maybe somebody had models. Nowadays, you're building out dungeons and playing with models and all. It's really cool. I've got a friend that he has a lot of money. He has a game room. He has a game table with a projection. The RPG Dungeons and Dragons porn that you see. It was like, oh, I wish I had that. Yeah, he was very successful in tech, so he has that. I've never been invited to play. They're like 70 sessions into their campaign.
You should write an angry letter.
They're basically playing a small tactical game. If you're doing that with Space Marines, you're basically be playing Kill Team.
Yeah. So, and again, this is we'll get to Cubicle 7, and we'll talk about their stuff in because they're the newest publisher.
Sounds cool.
But yeah, Imperium Maledictum looks like playing in the Underhive, and Wrath and Glory looks like playing the Inquisitorial Force.
That sounds cool.
It sounds a little bit better.
I just had this flash of the Space Marine bending down and saying, like, I'm checking for traps.
Right.
Before opening a door. I want to pick the lock.
So a lot of times the Fantasy Flight lore, you brought this up, especially for Death Watch, is kind of quoted as being lore. And as to where some of it is lore, some of it's
but
not.
How much?
And it's...
You put up the book where they had like the lore of the successor chapters.
Yeah, that all came from Death Watch, and like none of them are
which is basically like looking at all is a compilation of homebrew chapters.
Yeah, essentially. Last thing on Warhammer 40k roleplay. In my opinion, the D100 system is overtly complex for the purpose of being complex. I feel that the Savage World system, which is essentially, we talked about, it's kind of like the newest version of GURPS, I feel is much better. It's much more designed to telling a story and a lot less designed for consulting 77 charts when you try to cast Magic Missile. And that's really... I don't know Imperium Maledictum, and I don't know Wrath and Glory. I know Dark Heresy. I know Death Watch really well. Dark Heresy was one of those where, like, if you played a Psyker and you were going to cast a spell, you had to roll on 4 charts before you actually cast the spell.
Yeah,
and as to where I understand that's embracing the warp, it's also a lot of fucking paperwork.
I like there was a great... I just saw something. I forget who came out. This sort of came out of the there's a guy that does YouTube videos of role playing, probably also on TikTok and all. But he uses somebody came up with for his... he calls it's an emphasis D20, which has it's for when there's something should either go spectacular well or spectacularly bad. And it's a D20 with 3 1s and 3 20s.
Okay. You have more chances to really succeed or more chances to really fail.
Okay, so you took the example of you have to do 3 rolls to see where the grenade bounces on the 3rd bounce. No, you throw the grenade and you do your first roll and it doesn't go where you want it to go. You're not doing like how many bounces. It's like, no, you pick up the emphasis die and it said, your grenade bounced. It hit something and it bounced. So that
Yeah.
bounce will either be really bad or really good. So that's the roll the emphasis die. So you have three, instead of just one chance of a critical failure and it bouncing back into the middle of you, you've
You
got
got
three
three.
chances. And
Yeah.
instead of one chance of you're jumping from the catwalk to grab the swinging chain to get across the flaming whatever. That you're in the underhive, the sump juice river. Um, it'll either be really cool and go really well, or it'll go really bad. And so you have more
Well,
choices there. And I think that goes into storytelling, but still brings up
yeah.
I don't like having pure storytelling. I like die rolling as well.
I like die rolling as well, but I like player agency die rolling. As an example, when we looked at converting the Perils in the Warp system that was in the original Dark Heresy book, because it's a really cool system, into our D12 Savage World system, the first thing we did was we got rid of uh like there's literally a chart of like 75 potential things that will
Oh,
happen.
that's just like the random magic item chart from D&D.
Ex- exactly. But if you roll high enough on it, you go to another chart. And if you roll high enough on that chart,
No,
you go to
I've
another
done that
chart.
all. Yeah, you roll.
Yeah.
If you roll
So
between 90 and 100, you go to the next chart.
yeah, next chart.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what we did was, well, what I did was I stripped out all of the stuff that felt like trappings. So a trapping is something that always happens when the psyker does magic. And as the player playing the Psyker Chalk, you get to pick out of the 6 trappings what you want to always happen. Does the air always get frigid around you? Do you always seem to levitate a little bit? Does it always smell either really sweet or really bad around you when you're using? Because the overwhelming number of results that you get on each of these charts were things like it gets cold, it's stinky, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah, 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 blah. So you as the player, just pick one. Pick the one you want.
And those
Like,
things
I'm not
almost,
going to make you roll. Just pick the one
yeah,
you want.
those things
Like,
almost never
there's no
happen.
reason for you to roll 3 times. Just pick one. um, and then we did, yes, there are 3 charts to get really bad. And the bad one is a demon is summoned and the entire party has to fight a demon. But instead of 75 chances, 65 chances, 35 chances, it's 10 chances, 6 chances,
Yeah.
3 chances. It's a much faster system. And like it's just little things like that. The other thing with the D100 system is what's the percentage you're going to hit at. One of the things with Savage Worlds is as long as you succeed, you succeed. You might not damage the other person because there's like armor soak and all that, but like if you succeed, you
Yeah.
succeed. I don't the ability for Chalk's gunslinger to shoot a gun is always going to be a constant. It shouldn't matter if the guy you're shooting at has a better ballistic skill than you. So why compare these two numbers and do extra math? And I understand why the D100 system was built the way it was, because it was based on the weapon skill, ballistic skill, all the way through leadership, which was very constant in 3rd and 4th edition. I totally understand why they did it. I just think it's clunky. Maybe Cubicle 7 made it better, but they still calling it the original D100 system, so I don't trust it. So that's my own little like DM thing. The other thing is, a good role-playing game. As you mentioned, a good role-playing game, you need to roll dice, but you need to roll dice. What would you say? Like, I would say 25 to 35% of the time, right?
Oh yeah. It depends on the DM. If you've got a good DM that can actually do a good narrative story, which I think 40k does lend itself to
Oh,
in
100%.
the
100%.
right sort of campaign. It's a very good science fiction setting. I think it is a better science fiction setting than a lot of them.
Yeah, same.
I
There's a reason we do a podcast about the
I don't
lore,
think I
right?
could do a Star Trek role playing game. I know they are out there. That just for me, it doesn't lend itself to it.
There's not enough
There's not enough
conflict.
conflict. And of course, I like science and sorcery, so I like that part of
Yeah.
the warp and all, and the weird stuff that 40k lends itself to. Um, but it really depends on how the game master crafts his campaign and his style. Otherwise, it does come down to a lot of rolling.
Yeah. I mean, combat's always going to have a lot of roles in
But
it.
you want to have combat, and
Right.
because combat keeps it interesting. But if you have a good story and if you have good players, it's not just the DM; it's also the players, and they
Yeah.
have to be probably a group that's been together a long time, so that they can craft
Yeah.
their own story. Like if I don't know if you've ever been to the old time that you had you went to a con and you had like role playing cons and you got like 5 people tossed together that have never played before and a DM that doesn't know them and go like, okay, that just evolves into die rolling
Yeah.
because there's no synergy. Um, but then
Yeah.
you look at some of these ones that have been televised where the DM's like, you're supposed to be fighting the big bad that in the cave, but no, you're setting up a trade monopoly on carrots. I don't understand. And they're like, well, but they did, and because they're doing a role
This is
playing
more,
game.
yeah, this is more
Yeah.
engaging.
So
And then, and it's your responsibility. This is total tangent land, but it's your responsibility as the game master. In my opinion, I have been running games for a long time, but it's your responsibility as the game master to figure out how to bring your players back to the task at hand,
or
or
to form their carrot trade
roll with.
cartel and corner the market.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And take over the
exactly.
kingdom economically rather than saving the maiden and beating the dragon and taking over the kingdom that way.
So we had a extra story for you guys,
And then we're going to
and
wrap
then
up
we're done.
because it's been a long
And then
time.
we're done. Yeah. But one of the first D&D 2.5 Advanced Dungeons and Dragons 2.5 game I ever played. I was playing the rogue, and we got to a valley, and or we were trying to get to the castle, and in the valley in front of the castle is a sieging army, and the DM's objective or goal for us was essentially we had to negotiate our way across the valley so we could get into the castle and yada yada yada. And negotiations were not going well. So, being the rogue, I and the wizard snuck out at night and went down into the camp, and I took the stiletto daggers that my character fought with, and I started the wizard put sleep on the soldier, and then my rogue poked them twice in the neck, really close to each other. So we did that to like 7 or 8 people, 3 or 4 nights in a row. And then our negotiator, who was shit at negotiating, picked up on what we were doing, and instead of trying to negotiate his way across, just mentioned to the leader of the army that there had been vampires seen in the area, and legitimately like half the army left. They just fled. They're like, oh fuck, now we know what's going on. We didn't kill anybody, we just came up with and the DM was so pissed at us, but it was like, well, I mean, we weren't going to fight all those guys, and obviously our negotiator is shit, so new solution to the problem. And like, it
Yeah.
happens, like, it's just and it came out of me being a weird kid, but yeah, anyway, we are working on the role-playing game. There will be some updates about that. Chac will mention how to get to Patreon soon, where you can find some updates on that. And at some point, I will run a role playing game for
Yeah.
you guys. I just have to finish writing the rules.
But it is interesting that they were allowed to basically, or not allowed. I mean, it's like these were
It's
like
the
someplace
license
between
side of
fan
it.
fiction and actual official lore.
The Fantasy Flight stuff is definitely there. I feel like the Cubicle 7 stuff is a little bit more wrapped under like a traditional licensing agreement, and I think a lot of that stems back to how mature Games Workshop is with licensed
Yeah.
properties now.
Yeah, no, they were very they were
That
sort
was
of
the fast and loose
loose.
days.
Well, I think they were. Well, it's like when Marvel leased out all its gave away the rights to all of its
Right, right.
properties because they needed money. This is why we got all those horrible Sony Spider-Man
Yeah.
movies and the really bad Fantastic Four. Um,
Oh,
but now that they know how things go, they have a much
yeah,
tighter
tighter ship.
control. And Disney, they have a much tighter control over how their IPs are used. And I think we've seen that in the development of Games Workshop.
Oh, definitely.
And things have gotten much tighter. And I think also you see that in the Black Library. I think the overall storylines are much tighter. And as much as
Yeah.
some people are crying about Dan Abnett and woke GW and all, the only reason he's writing those books is because he's allowed to write those books. I can guarantee you that there are story meetings with GW execs before any of this stuff gets published or
And
gets
from
written.
yeah, and from what we know, like that some of the, in air quotes, wokeness stuff that's happening now has been an open discussion since the Black Library
Yeah.
started being successful. Because the authors at the end of the day want to tell interesting stories, and interesting stories require different points
Mhm.
of view and different
Like,
points of
we don't know
opposition.
what's happening with his current storyline with the Inquisitor. We don't know what's coming up in the last book. But I can
He needs to release it. He needs
100%
to.
guarantee if Valdor comes back, it has been planned through GW. He is not pulling Constantine Valdor out of his ass and going, "Surprise!"
Yeah. Not only that, but like the number of clues.
Yeah.
Although I still don't think it's I don't think
No,
it's
no, no, I
Valdor.
don't either. I think it's Sanguinius.
Ooh, that would make it interesting.
Well, 'cause they're all angels. He's got the angels, the angel space marines
Yeah, the
flying
blood angel
around.
things. And all right. Well, if you guys have any questions about today's show or want to get into contact with us about the podcast in general, you can do that through email at underthehiveofmadness@gmail.com. Or you can find us over on Discord and you can join in the conversation about existing lore, world building, gaming in general, and much, much more. You can also find links to our show on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Check out our website, underthehiveofmadness.com, which is currently going through some updates. You'll see some new beautiful headshots of those members in the cast and hopefully pictures of their armies soon. You can also check out the link tree, which will be down in our show notes where all of the official links and spellings are. If you want to keep up with every one of us in the cast and our various internet meanderings and personas.
And I meander quite a lot, although I am going to try to refocus on Warhammer stuff. So you can help the podcast grow by liking and reviewing us wherever you get your podcast fix. I tend to use Apple, but that's just because I like CarPlay and it's easy to do. But our home officially is Spotify, and when I send people links, I send them to Spotify. You could also find us on Audible, like I said, Apple Podcasts, Castbox, iHeartRadio, Radio Public, and we used to be on Google Podcasts, but they're closing that down, so you won't be able to find us there anymore. Support us through Patreon at www.patreon.com/underthehiveofmadness. And you can join with an awesome crew of patrons for access to extra content and a chance to snag some cool merch in our monthly giveaway. For example, Ryan and I just spent 45 minutes before this podcast talking about the wonders of 3D printing,
3D printing.
which we don't talk about on the main
Yeah.
podcast, but we do talk about on the Patreon.
And you can also see a video version of the podcast. We usually plug it right up at the front. We totally forgot there is a video version of the podcast. Sorry. And if you're interested in that monthly giveaway and you're interested in knowing what the merch is, we are giving away a dry palette, and we will be doing that next week on our next recording session when we should have full cast in-house. We'll be raffling it off.
It is a full logo Under the Hive of Madness dry palette. It's not just one of those, not just a piece of cork.
That's right. It's branded merch, baby. Chac, you warned me. I probably should have listened to you, and we should have hired a pair of Ogren. This grav skiff isn't graving anymore any slower, and I'm gonna have to get out and push.
Well, you shouldn't have eaten that extra burrito.
Working hard to be everything the Arbites ever warned you about, all while shattering whatever's left of the piece. We are 665.66 UHMR Chemrat Radio, reminding all of you Chemrats, Hive Mice, and Sump Ghoulies to keep those dials fixed right here. Same ratty frequency for a dose of the same ratty ass attitude.
In the underhive so deep, where shadows softly creep, four-armed emperors roam while we dream and sleep. With eyes that gleam so bright and claws that softly snare. Stay close, my little one. take the utmost care. In the darkness they will hide, waiting by our side. Four-armed emperors seek places you might slide. So hold tight, don't you stray. Keep the night at bay, for the emperors are near, lurking every.
Man, they don't sound as creepy when I write them. I love how you read them, man. They're awesome. Speaking of, go out and find a Warhammer 40k lore book and read it.
Yeah, definitely. Read a book, and see you guys all next week.
Yeah. Have a good night, guys.